Hello guys, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at this piece of fairly lengthy code about a PC part picker program. Now, for those of you who don't know the first video or don't know the capability of the code, we're just going to quickly run it and check what it actually does. So we're going to start by entering a value. The user is going to enter a value for the budget for their PC in their head. Okay, so their dream PC, for example, could be £2,000. I'm going to enter in £1,200 because it's more of a realistic budget, and it's what my very own PC had a budget of. So it then just confirms the budget. Your budget is to £1,200. That means that the GPU budget should roughly be £504, and it basically uses a series of if and elif statements that which I will show you to determine the ratio of the GPU budget and the rest of the components budget. And it then creates or finds the best GPU for you underneath that budget. So in this case, it's the RTX 5060 Ti 16GB model. So if you don't know what that means, it's essentially a extra, this part you can ignore, but it's essentially a graphics card for your computer, and it handles things like running games graphics and rendering, stuff like that. So essentially it creates a ratio based off of the initial input, and then finds from its own dictionary or library or whatever you want to call it, the GPU which is best matched and best suited for that budget. If you don't like it, it also suggests two other sorry, not those two, two other GPUs which are underneath that budget. It then calculates the remaining amount of budget for your next components and goes on to the CPU. After going on to the CPU and assigning a CPU budget, which in this case is £168, the next thing that it has to do is find the best CPU for you based off of that budget. So it creates and finds the first best CPU, the AMD Ryzen 5 7600X. By the way, the CPU is the central processing unit. It is essentially the brains of the computer. But anyways, it finds the next closest CPU options otherwise, if you don't like that. For example, the £157 Intel Core Ultra 5 225F, or the Intel Core, Intel Core i5 13400, not K, 13400, £145. So anyways, that's what the program can do. And now let me show you the actual program and how you'd code it for yourself and how you can apply it in other situations, which is essentially what this video is aimed at. So to start with, I'll explain this section, I guess. So this is the dictionary of GPUs. I've just commented, by the way, in red. It just means that it won't interfere with the code if you put a hashtag before the line, and then you'll essentially be able to tell more easily what each part of the code does. So, and it keeps things neater. So here is the dictionary of GPUs. I have got, this just is for me to remember how much I have. So this is the 7th version of this code, which I've posted. I've got 51 GPUs here. I've got all of these 50 series, all of these 40 series, all of these 30 series, all of these GPUs. I then have a CPU section. So why is the syntax like this? Well, you have to know this syntax. It's very important. To create a dictionary, you have to first create the name of the dictionary. In this case, I'm going to be using the name GPUs. Then you place an equal sign, and then you use these curly brackets, note, not normal brackets, and you can then, whilst indenting your code, you can then enter all of the GPUs you want. You have to make sure that you enter the name. In this case, it's the RTX 5090, so I would enter that in speech marks, just like any other character or string. Just like any other string, you want to keep it inside the speech marks to indicate it's a string. You then want a colon to separate it from the actual value assigned to that. So in this case, the name of the GPU is the 5090, RTX 5090. I have then assigned a value based on the current real-time value in the market for a 5090 is £1,970. Then you place a comma before continuing on with as many more GPUs as you want. So once you've done that, you might be thinking, okay, so what are these called? Well, this is called a tuple. It's very important. It's essentially the bones of this entire piece of code. The tuple is basically the string plus the value, which you can then call later on in the code. And I've done the same thing for the CPUs, although we'll go back to that later. Now we have to ask for the actual budget, the total budget in this case, so I've named it accordingly, total budget. And I've changed it immediately into an integer, because that note, you can, instead of wasting another line and changing this variable total budget into an integer in another line, you can simply put it before the input, and then bracket off that. So what is your overall budget for the entire PC? Enter one value only. So this is where I would have inputted £1,200 if you remember from the example. Now we are going to calculate the GPU budget using a ratio. So here is a series of if and elif statements. It might look like pretty messy, but it's essentially a series of statements which filter through the values going from highest, this is very important, highest to lowest. If you do it from lowest to highest, then there'll be an error in your code. It won't work properly, it won't function, because that a value might be true for multiple statements. But I'll go on to that later, and you can always comment and ask if you're confused about this, remember guys. But essentially, the total budget will be going through downwards. So if we have £1,200, let's just quickly run through it. So here, total budget is greater than or equal to £4,000. Is it greater than or equal to £4,000? Nope, it is less than. So we go down. Then is it greater than or equal to 3,500? It isn't. So we go down, and we go down, and we go down, and we go down, and we go down to this statement. So here is where we will actually apply the new GPU budget and apply the decimal, which we will multiply by the total budget to get that new variable, the GPU budget. So I've just basically done in increments of like 1 to 5-ish, because that when you have bigger budgets, you can spend more on the GPU. Hence, you can have a bigger decimal to multiply. So here you'll be having 55% of the total budget spent on the GPU budget. Here you'll have 54%, 52%, and so onwards. So in our case, we have 42% of the total budget going towards the new variable, the GPU budget. Now we're going to quickly round it. This is just a simple function using the round function in Python. You do not need to import anything for this, and you just simple syntax, enter the variable, you equal it to the rounded version, but like put round, not rounded, and make sure you put parentheses or brackets. Now just quickly confirm both of the variables that we have so far. So your budget is X, in this case £1,200, and that means your GPU budget should roughly be X, and in this case, like what, £504? Yeah, 52%, not 52, 42% of 1,000, yeah, okay, £504, I think. So now we have to split and sort the tuples. Do you remember what I said by tuples? Tuples are these, the string and the value, integer value assigned to it. So we are going to, this is probably the most complicated of the part of the code, so I might take a bit more time to explain this, because it's very, very important. So we are going to take the tuples and essentially sort it. So we are going to take a new variable called the sorted GPUs. We're going to call it that because that's what makes the most sense. And we're going to use the sorted function in Python, idle, and use the GPUs.items. So you can replace GPUs with whatever you have called your dictionary. So in this case, I've called mine GPUs, so I'll put GPUs.items. If you've called yours cars, then it'll be cars.items. Okay, so you'll then take that. Okay, where I've lost the code. Yeah, so you'll then take that and you'll use a key. This key is very important. The key basically tells you, okay, so GPU items is the dictionary. Now, Python, what do I have to do with this? I have to take and sort the GPUs for closest to the total budget. Because remember, we're trying to get a GPU which is as close to the GPU budget as possible. So we use key equals lambda. Lambda is essentially the name for that sorting feature. It's the name of that function or formula, if you like, that finds the GPU which is closest, e.g. item 1 minus the GPU budget, because that item 1 minus the GPU budget is basically the remnants, or what do you call, you're subtracting, it's the difference, yeah, the difference. So you want the smallest difference possible between the two, the GPU budget and the actual GPU which you have chosen. So now we take that best GPU, we introduce a new variable called the best GPU, and we then take the sorted GPUs and just enter with a colon, put in a number. In this case, I've chosen 1 because that 1 means that I'm taking the first, or essentially the closest GPU to the budget for the GPU, that item. I'm taking that item. If I enter 3, for example, I'll get the top 3 items, okay? So now I'm taking the tuple and splitting it. This is very important as well. So it's essentially like equation. If any of you guys are good at maths, shout out Dev. You take the best GPU name here, and you take the best GPU price, and that equals the best GPU. So if you're wondering what that means, this is the best GPU name. Sorry, this, the green part, the string, and then this is the best GPU price. We're just splitting it. It's the same thing on both sides. It's just that we're taking it and splitting it in half. Not exactly half, but we're splitting it by this colon. That's why the colon is there, actually, I think. So we split it to get the best GPU name and best GPU price split so that we can then format it better when we're printing it. So here I can insert the best GPU name. By the way, top tip, use a comma instead of concatenation with a plus, as it automatically adds a space, and you can add multiple quite easily. But now we're just going to do the same thing and find the best 3 GPUs. If you remember previously, I did that so that you have a couple of backup options. And now we just print and format the other GPUs. So this is just standing for a new line, the backward slash and n. It just stands for new line to format it better. But other close GPU options, and then for GPU and best underscore 3 GPUs, print GPU 0, so that means the first GPU, and GPU 1. So yeah, that's essentially the code. And now we're going to just consolidate on what you've learned so far, and let's see if you can remember it with the CPU section. So this is calculating the 3, 2, 1 GPU, sorry, the remaining total. This is printing that remaining total. This is the series of CPU's if and elif statements. This is rounding the CPU budget. This is printing the CPU budget. This is sorting the CPU budget using the key lambda and finding the difference between the 2 variables, the item in the tuple and the CPU budget. Then we are going to sort it and find the best 1. Remember, you can use any number here for how many ever GPUs or CPUs you want, or in more broader terms, any amount of variables you want. And now we're going to split the tuple. The very important part is the comma. And remember, it's like an equation. You have the tuple here just split with the comma, where the colon would have been, and then you have the actual tuple on the other side. Now we just print that off, and now we print and format the other 3 CPUs. And that's going to be it for today, guys. Quite a decently long video, I know. It's unfortunate, I'm sorry, but just give it a try. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Please subscribe, please like and comment. This was for you, Dev.